It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Belgium. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 25 on the players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Belgium's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and categorize them into definite, likely, possible, and so on. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. After that, at that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three sections. Section one, we look at some of the general information on the team. Section two is where we cover the main candidates in each position and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. And section three, where we summarize and have some concluding business. Let's begin then. So we look at some general information on Belgium and begin with retirements. So, wow, the golden generation has been coming up to retirement and now it is happening. We have Toby Alderweireld. He played from 2009 to 22 with 127 caps and 5 goals. And he last appeared for the national team he announced his retirement from soccer in March 2023. So shortly after the World Cup, which is the case for most of these players. Next, we have Eden Hazard, who not only has retired from the national team, but from football altogether. So retired from the national team in December 2022 and from soccer in October 2023. He was 31 and 32 years old, respectively, so retiring quite young there. Eden Hazard was at times the captain of the team for the Euro 2020 and Euro 2022. Oh, also for the, ever since Euro 2016, actually, Hazard was captain. He played from 2008 to 2022 with 122 caps and 33 goals, Eden Hazard. Next, we have Axel Witsel. He played from 2008 to 2022 with 130 caps and 12 goals, so the most of them all actually in terms of caps. But you will see that all of these players have similar years and cap numbers. Axel Witsel announced his retirement in March 2023. Dries Mertens played from 2011 to 2022 with 109 caps and 21 goals. Still playing club soccer is Dries Mertens, but last appeared for the national team in the 2022 World Cup. So hasn't actually announced his retirement, but at 37 years old now. We are kind of saying major players who have not played for the team over the period. So we don't necessarily have an official retirement for them. Next, I've been not putting the names on the graphic. So Axel Witsel, Dries Mertens. Next, we have goalkeepers Simon Mignolet from 2011 to 2022. Usually wasn't the starter, actually. In none of the tournaments was he a starter. So just 35 caps for him, but nevertheless part of this generation. So Simon Mignolet did announce his retirement in March 2023. And finally, we have the brother of Eden Hazard, Thorgan Hazard, who played from 2013 to 2022, 47 caps and 9 goals, so not as quite as illustrious as his brother, but he did come on towards the end. He was selected for the last 3 tournaments, and a starter in Euro 2020. And he has not announced his retirement, but last appeared for the national team in 2022. So this all adds up to a theme of the golden generation retiring. Let's take a quick look at their club affiliations. And actually, we see the same thing here, that, in the past, these players we've just announced as retired played for the very toppest of clubs. And we still have a few of those. Kevin De Bruyne with Manchester City, Romelu Lukaku with Roma. Those are 2 of their biggest players. And we do have a couple of big clubs represented by some of the younger players. So Atletico Madrid, Arsenal, not a young player, Leandro Trossard for Arsenal. But it tends to be kind of not the top clubs in the top leagues, but kind of the secondary clubs in the top leagues. So in England, it would be Everton and Leicester, for example. In Germany, rather than Bayern Munich, it's Wolfsburg and Augsburg, and so on. In Italy, they only have a couple of players in Italy, but anyway, you get the point. Not the quality of club affiliations that they had during the golden generation. So we're seeing that here. Nevertheless, very solid clubs, and but it'll be interesting to see how this retirement of the golden generation affects their results going forward. Actually, we'll see in recent games too. We'll have something to say about that. Okay, recent games. Well, Belgium played in the World Cup in 2022, of course. So we will be looking at that period in terms of the lineups. We'll kind of begin our narrative with who played in what positions during the 2022 World Cup. But for participation of the players, we're examining from the start of 2023. So they played 12 games since that time. And that's what we're most focused on here. Belgium has participated in a lot of tournaments, but here too you see a bit of the golden generation theme coming up again, in that they didn't make the World Cup in 2006 and 2010, didn't make the Euro Cup in 2008 and 12. So you see the golden generation got them to every tournament from the 2014 World Cup onwards. So, Belgium, may seem to be kind of a world power, and they have been over the last 10 years. But the point is that is not their overall history. And they may be going back to being a lesser team than they've been over the past 10 to 15 years. In terms of looking at the details of each player, we will be giving a bio, especially on the main players. But we're going to give a little less details than we gave for the 2022 World Cup. So we'll really just focus or go back to 2 or 3 tournaments, recent tournaments, when we talk about their participation. And for clubs, we'll go back 1 or 2 clubs. We did a mediacast in 2022 on Belgian players, probably went into more detail on these things. So if you're interested in the history of the players, it might be good to listen to that. A lot of it is still relevant, and you'll also hear the kind of clubs that those retired players were with. Okay, let's move on to formations and the formations that they tend to use. So 47% of the time, or almost half of the time, that would be 7 out of their 15 games, including the 3 World Cup games, it is a 4-3-3 formation, 47 or let's say 50% of the time. 27% of the time, it is a 4-2-3-1 formation. And then they have used a few other formations. So 4 out of the 15 times they used a different formation. That different formation did include 3 at the back. So we do have actually 3 games where they use 3-man central defense. Otherwise, in the main formations, they use the 4-3-3, the 4-2-3-1. It has been a 4-man backline, 2 central defenders, a right back and a left back. So anyway, keep that in mind as we go through. About half of the time it's a 4-3-3, if you envision that, and about a quarter of the time the 4-2-3-1, and then a quarter of the time other formations, and we will be mentioning the times that they used a 3-man backline, especially when we talk about defense and wingers. Okay, upcoming games is our last order of business in this section, and they have 2 warm-up games. One is a friendly against Montenegro in Belgium, and the other a friendly against Luxembourg. So that is June 5th and June 8th, respectively. So playing fairly light teams there, and we will get a closer look at their squad to clear up any doubts that emerge from our run through here. And we might make mention of them in part 2 when that one comes out. Let's move on to the main part of the mediacast, our look at the players and the candidates for the squad. So we'll begin with the management. And we had Roberto Martinez managing the team from 2016 to 22. So he's an outgoing manager now. He retired after the World Cup. He says it wasn't because of the poor performance in the 2022 World Cup that he was planning to leave afterwards. And actually, there is evidence that that was true, given how quickly the new manager came in. Anyway, Roberto Martinez has moved on. He's actually manager of Portugal now, so he will be at this tournament, but with a different team. The manager who came in is Domenico Tedesco. He is very young for a manager, just 38 years old, and has no experience at the national level, and in fact not a lot of experience at the club level either. So with Belgium since 2023. Prior to that, he managed Leipzig in Germany, but only for a year, from 2021 to 22. Schalke before that, for a couple of years, and then a small club in Germany from 2017. So I'm surprised, to be honest, that a relatively inexperienced manager is managing this Belgian team, but there we have it. Okay, let's finish with a summary of the position. I've said some of this stuff, but just to sum it all up, Roberto Martinez, manager since 2016. He earned a 3rd place finish for them in the 2018 World Cup, which was fabulous for Netherlands. In the 2020 Euro Cup, they fell to the champions Italy in the quarterfinals, and then disappointingly fell in the group stage of the 2022 World Cup. So he resigned immediately after that 3rd group stage game with Croatia, saying that he had been planning on retiring after the Cup regardless. And as we saw, became manager of Portugal very shortly after, in January 2023. Actually, I made a mistake earlier because I thought it was Tedesco that was appointed in January 2023, very shortly after the Cup, but he wasn't. He was confirmed as manager on February 8th, 2023. And his contract only runs to the end of Euro 2024. So there we have it, Tedesco taking them through this cup, and we move on to look at goalkeepers. Let's start by listing the candidates here. We have Matt Sells as a definite candidate, Thomas Kaminski as a likely candidate, Cohen Castiles as the first of 2 possible candidates, And Arnaud Baudart, also a possible candidate, but an injury concern, which we'll talk about a bit later. Thibaut Courtois is possible but unlikely here, so we'll explain why when we get to that. And we have Simon Mignolet. We'll put him in the retired category because, he did announce his retirement, so there we go. Okay, let's go back and look at these players. Matt Sells is 32 years old, and he only has 8 caps for the national team and been with them since 2021. He's currently with Nottingham Forest in England since 2024, and was with Strasbourg in France for 6 years prior to that. He was selected for Euro 2020. He was on the roster but saw no action, and that was actually, he was selected before he got his first cap for the team. Was not selected though for the World Cup in 2022. He was on the preliminary squad but didn't make the final cut, which was a surprise because he had seemed likely to make it. Over the recent period, so from the start of 2023, he started 6 of their 12 games, and was on the bench for 6 others. So we have him as a definite candidate for selection, not necessarily, though, as the starting keeper. We move on to our likely candidate, Thomas Kaminski, 31 years old. And he only has 1 cap for the national team since 2020. And Kaminski plays for Luton in England since 2023 and was with Blackburn in England prior to that. He also was a backup keeper for Euro 2020 and also was not selected for the 2022 World Cup. In his case, he didn't even make the preliminary squad there. And recently he returned after a year-long absence in March of 2023. And he didn't start any games. He was subbed in for 1, but he was on the bench for 9 games. So just 1 match that he was not selected for. So we have him as likely to be called up to the Cup. The first possible candidate, Cohen Casteels, also 31 years old, and also just 8 caps and no goals, has been with the team since 2018. So all of these players struggling to get caps under the reign of Thibaut Courtois. Casteels plays for Wolfsburg in Germany since 2015. He was a backup keeper for the 2018 World Cup, but not for Euro 2020, which was a bit of a surprise there. But he did come back for the 2022 World Cup and was a backup keeper there. Since that World Cup, he started 4 of their 12 games, and he was on the bench for 3. He was injured for 1, and that was the last match, although he has recovered from that injury. He was also not selected for 4 matches. So that adds up to a possible for us, but actually probably a bit higher, given that there's just 2 candidates ahead of him. And actually, in terms of starts, he has a stronger claim than Thomas Kaminski, but we'll get into that. The other possible candidate is Arnaud Baudart, and he is 26 years old and has no caps for the team. He first appeared in June 2023 on the bench and has never started any games, but was on the bench for 6 matches, including the last 2, but not selected for 4. He's on the injury list. He is out with a minor knock. I put that in quotation marks. But that minor knock has been since late April and has an unknown return date. So I must say it seems a little more than minor, given that he's been out for so long. Let's finish with the reigning goalkeeper, Thibaut Courtois. So part of the golden generation for sure, even though he's the same age as most of the other keepers, just 32 years old. He has been with the team since 2011 and has amassed 102 caps. So still with his club team, which is Real Madrid in Spain since 2018, and the starter in all of the tournaments that we see with the Golden Generation since 2014. But what's more relevant here is his recent history. He started two of the first three of their 12 games. So two of the first three, and then was injured for all of the others, even the match in between those two starts. He was injured with three separate injuries, including the last 8 matches. So really out due to injury. So we're not really sure if he's retiring kind of from the team like so many of the Golden Generation, or whether it's just solely the injuries that have kept him out. And that kind of leads us into our narrative. Sorry, I had to cough there. Courtois was the keeper in all 3 games of the World Cup and started 2 of the 3 games after that. But as we saw, he was injured for every other game. So Sells and Casteels shared the starts. But after that, Sells started in games, mostly where Casteels was not even called up. So actually, at the beginning, it seemed like Casteels had the edge to become the leading keeper, but Sells now looks the main candidate, given that he started 5 of the last 6 games. So still up in the air a bit as to who the starter is. The June games will be interesting to look at to see who gets the nod. Okay, let's move on to defenders and central defenders. And I'll just talk about the position a little bit here. Usually it's a 4-man back line. So we have 2 central defenders. But once in the Cup and a couple of times after, we did see a 3-man back line. So that will come into play here. Sometimes we will need 3 central defenders. Let's begin with the candidates. We have a definite candidate in Wout Faes. We actually have Arthur Theat coded as a central defender, but we're moving him off the list here over to left defense, although we do see he will pop up here as a central defender. Next, we have Jan Vertonghen. He is, well, he was a likely candidate, but he is an injury risk, an injury doubt here, which we'll talk about. Also likely, Zeno de Bast. And then we have a couple of possible candidates in Coney de Winter and Amin Al-Dakil, who is also on the injury list. And then a couple of possible but not likely, Zeno van Hoosten and Jorn Spielers, possible but unlikely. And then one player who seems to be off the squad is, Leon Den Donker. And I said, because I realized it's more than one player. So, sorry, Leander Den Donker. And we also have Sebastian Bornau as seemingly off the squad. Finally, we have Toby Alderweireld retired, as we said at the beginning in the section 1. So wow, a lot of candidates, but again, keep in mind we're filling 2 or 3 positions on the field here. Let's begin with Wout Faes. He's 26 years old and has been with Belgium since 2022 with 13 caps and no goals. And Faes plays for Leicester in England since 2022 and was with Stade Reims in France before that. He was selected for the 2022 World Cup, but he was on the bench for all 3 games there. However, he has become a starter since, probably because of the retirement of Alderweireld. And Faes has started 10 of their 12 games since the World Cup, and he subbed in for 2 others, so looks like a definite selection there. Jan Vertonghen is next. He is 37 years old, but still playing for the national team and has more caps than all of the retired players that we saw. 154 caps and 10 goals for Jan Vertonghen. Been with Belgium since 2007. So still playing club soccer, of course, for Anderlecht in Belgium since 2022, moving from Benfica in Portugal. So Jan Vertonghen, part of all of the tournaments in the Golden Generation period, and most recently a starter in the World Cup 2022. So a starter all along, Vertonghen. And he started 9 of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023. He was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 1. So still very much part of the squad. However, Vertonghen is out with a hamstring injury since mid-May and an unknown return date. So that does not look good in terms of his making it for the tournament. Hamstring injuries usually being long-term. So that may open up the door for these players below. The first of which is likely candidate Zeno de Bast. He's just 20 years old and has 6 caps and no goals since 2022. He also plays for Anderlecht in Belgium since 2021. That was his first club and youth club. He too, like Faes, was selected for the 2022 World Cup, but just on the bench there. But unlike Faes, he hasn't started that much since. He started only 2 of their 12 games since the World Cup. He was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 7, though. And so we have him as a likely candidate to make the squad. And again, with the injury of Vertonghen, that might get him a starting position. Next, Coney de Winter, the first of our 2 possible candidates, 21 years old and got his first cap in 2024. Actually was on the preliminary squad for the World Cup in 2022, but didn't make the final cut. And had to wait until 2024 to get his first appearance. But in March of this year, he started 1 of their remaining 2 games and was on the bench for the other. So Coney de Winter plays for Juventus in Italy since 2021, but has been loaned to Genoa in Italy since 2023. So an up-and-comer, it looks like. And again, may have a better chance in this tournament with other players injured. One of those injured players is our other possible candidate, Amin Al-Dakil, and he is 23 years old and has 4 caps and no goals since 2023 with Belgium. He plays for Burnley in England, but I follow the EPL, but haven't particularly seen him as on the field. I better stop hesitating here. Okay, he got his first appearance in June 2023 for the national team, started 1 of their remaining 10 games and was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. But he was not selected for 2 and injured for the last 3 matches, and that injury persists until now. So out with a muscle injury since mid-February, and his return date is expected to be June 30th, which would be pretty much towards the end of the group phase. So it looks like if that's the case, he will not be selected. So again, more room opening up for those below. Zeno van Hoosen plays for Inter Milan in Italy. Actually, his second stint with them, has not been selected for any cup, and actually just 1 cap. But I won't give the full bio on him because he returned after a 2-year absence in October 2023. Didn't start any of their remaining 6 games, but he was on the bench for 2, injured for 2, and not selected for 2 others. I believe he's recovered from that injury because he's not on the injury list, but those were the March 2024 games. So perhaps moving up to a possible level would be Zeno van Hoosten. The other possible but unlikely is the young Jorn Spears. He is just 19 years old, and he first appeared in November 2023. Was on the bench for a game, but then with the under-23 team for the last matches, which is pretty much saying that he wasn't selected for the last 3 matches. So it may be good to keep those possible but unlikely in mind, because they may move up in their likelihood due to the injuries. So let's talk about the position in summary. It was the veterans Vertonghen and Alvarado in all 3 games of the World Cup. In the one game where they had a 3-man backline, Den Donker joined them. That was in game 1. Alderweireld retired after the Cup and was replaced by Wout Faes. And then he and Vertonghen became the main pairing throughout this period. When it was a 3-man backline, it was actually the right back, or we're going to talk about Theat. Not a right back, a left back. We're going to talk about him as a left back. He came in when it was a 3-man backline, and he played all 3 games when they had those 3 central defenders. 4 players had single starts, one replacing each of Alderweireld and Faes in each of the last 2 games. So I do believe we will see more of those possible but unlikely players, and even likely player Debast coming into the picture. Okay, let's move to our next position, left back. This is just one position, so we have fewer candidates. And we've already mentioned Arthur Theat. So we moved him. He's coded as a central defender, but we've moved him here. And we also have a likely candidate in Olivier Deman. So just 2 candidates here. The definite candidate, Arthur Theat, is 24 years old, and he has 15 caps and no goals since the beginning of 2021. And he plays for Reims in France since 2022. And was in Belgium before that. Theat was selected for the World Cup in 2022, but just on the bench there, like some of the players we're seeing coming through now. But like Wout Faes, he has become a starter and started 11 of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023, and was on the bench for the others. So very much a definite candidate, Arthur Theat. Olivier Deman, a likely candidate, is 24 years old. He's actually coded as a left midfielder, but we've moved him here because his only starts were as a left back. So 24 years old with 4 caps since 2023. And Deman plays for Werder Bremen in Germany. And he got his first appearance for the national team in June of 2023. He started 2 of their remaining 10 games and subbed in for 1, and was on the bench for all 7 others. So really a definite candidate. I think we had him as likely because he's not a starter, but in terms of making the squad, he seems a definite candidate. Let's look at the position and summarize it then. The position did not exist in the 3-4-2-1 formation of game 1 of the World Cup. But the right back, Castagny, played the position in the following 2 games. Theat, who I said is coded as a central defender, took firm control of the left-back position after the Cup, and as we saw, moved back into central defence when it was a 3-man backline. Left midfielder Olivier Deman replaced Theat twice towards the end, both of those in friendlies. 3 of their last 4 games were friendlies. Let's move on to the right back position, and here we have Timothy Castagna, who we just mentioned as having started 2 games as left back in the World Cup, and he's a definite candidate. We have Thomas Meunier as a possible candidate, and then we have Hugo Siquet, Hugo Saquet as a possible but unlikely candidate. Let's take a look at them. Thomas Meunier, sorry, I'm not starting with him. I'm starting with Timothy Castagna. Timothy Castagna is 28 years old. He's been with Belgium since 2018 with 41 caps and 2 goals. And he was a starter in the Euro 2020, although he subbed out a game 1 27 minutes in due to an injury, which ended his tournament. But he returned for the 2022 World Cup and was a starter there as well, and very much a starter in the period we're looking at. Started 11 of their 12 games and subbed in for the others. So Timothy Castagna, a definite candidate, and I think I forgot to say that he's playing for Fulham in England since 2023 and was with Leicester for 3 years before that. Thomas Meunier is 32 years old. Part of the golden generation, maybe a little bit later than the golden generation, because he started in 2013. So most of them started a couple of years before that. Anyway, 64 caps and 8 goals for Thomas Meunier, and plays for Trabzonspor in Turkey since 2022. That's a move, since 2024. That's a recent move from Borussia Dortmund in Germany, where he was for 4 years, and with Paris Saint-Germain before that for 4 years. Thomas Meunier then has been part of tournaments not since the 2024 World Cup, but the 2016 Euro Cup, and was a starter really only in the 2018 World Cup, but in the 2022 World Cup, after subbing into game 1 at halftime, he gained a starting position, as we saw, as the left back. No, sorry, I'm mixing him up with Castagna. Anyway, he gained a starting position in the recent World Cup. He has, however, started none of their 12 games since that World Cup. He was subbed in for the last 2, on the bench for the first 2, and then either injured or not selected for the 8 others. So Thomas Meunier, just a possible candidate here, and our possible but unlikely candidate is Hugo Saquet. He got his first appearance in September 2023, but has been with the under-21 team, I believe that is, could be under-23 team, for the last 6 matches. So that's tantamount to being not selected. Okay, let's look at the position. Castagna did play on the right side in game 1 of the World Cup, but the right back position was pushed up into a right wing position. After that, he moved over to the left, and the right midfielder Thomas Meunier came in to play as the right defender. So I should have said that we moved Meunier from his coded position as a right midfielder back to right defence here, because he played there in the Cup. After the Cup, though, Castagna returned to the right and firmly held the position. He played all games as either the right back or the right winger if it was a 3-man defence. And central defender De Bast was the one who replaced him the one time he wasn't there. Okay, let's go to central or to midfielders. And we begin with defensive midfielders, and we'll introduce the candidates. First, we have the likely candidate, Amadou Onana, so no definite candidates here. And then we have possible but unlikely Mandala Keita. And we have Romeo Lavia, seems to be off the squad, so we won't go into detail on him. Let's look at Amadou Onana. He's just 22 years old, but has 11 caps since 2022, and he plays for Everton in England, with Lille in France before that, and then Hamburg in Germany prior to that. Onana was selected for the World Cup in 2022. He subbed into game one at halftime and then gained a starting position uh, for game two and would have for game three, except he picked up 2 yellow cards and was suspended for game three. So Amadou Onana had started 6 of their 12 games since the beginning of the 2023. He subbed in for 1 and was out for 3. Well, was out for 5 games for various reasons. So that's why we have him as a likely candidate. Just there about half the time over the period, but did start when he was called up for the most part. Mandela Keita is possible but unlikely. He was injured for the last 4 matches, although he has since recovered. We won't go into detail on him unless he's selected. Which then in part 2 we'll detail it a bit more. Before summarising the position, we will look at central midfielders because the two overlap. And here we have a definite candidate in Orel Mangala, a likely candidate in Yuri Tielemans. Actually, several likely candidates, although the next one, Aster Vranks, is an injury concern. Arthur Vermeeren, also likely, and that's it. 3 likely candidates. None in the possible category or below that, but we do have the retired Axel Witsel, who has officially retired since March 2023. Okay, let's look at these candidates. Orel Mangala is fairly new to the squad, 26 years old though, with 13 caps since 2022. And actually, yeah, not as new as I thought. It's just that he hasn't been part of any tournaments. He was on the preliminary squad for the World Cup, but not selected. But he has become a starter since, starting 8 of their 12 games. As well as subbing in for 3 and on the bench for 1 other. So always called up and starting 2/3 of the time. Orel Mangala. Next, Yuri Tielemans. He's 27 years old, has been with Belgium since 2016 and has 67 caps and 5 goals. Tielemans plays for Aston Villa in England since 2023 and was with Leicester in England prior to that. Tielemans was selected from the World Cup 2018 onwards and was a starter in the last 2 tournaments. And over the recent period, Tielemans has started 7 of their 12 games and subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1. So he was injured for the first match and not selected for 1 other. So Yuri Tielemans, a likely candidate. The next likely candidate is Aster Vranks. I won't go into detail on him because he is out with a torn muscle fiber. That injury picked up in early May, so fairly recently, with an unknown return date. So I'll just give his recent participation. He got his first appearance in June 2023, Aster Vranks, and started 2 of their remaining 6 games, was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3 others. So since his first call-up in June 2023, he has been regularly selected, or always selected, I should say, but an injury doubt. The third likely candidate is Arthur Vermeeren, and he is just 19 years old, but has 4 caps already since 2023 and plays for Atletico Madrid in Spain since 2024. So a good candidate coming through. And he was with Royal Antwerp in Belgium before that. So that's a big move up in terms of club affiliation. And Arthur Vermeeren, probably his chances improved by the injury of Aster Vranks. Okay, now we can go back and summarize the position. And I should have said that at the beginning, that the position had two players in the World Cup, regardless of the formation. Sometimes it was three players. If you think of the 4-3-3 formation and the 3-5-2 formation, there will be three defensive or central midfielders. However, it's sometimes a little hard to tell because when there's three, often one of them or more will be an attacking midfielder. So not purely this position, but if it's a 4-2-3-1, then we're pretty sure those two positions will be defensive or central midfielders. In terms of the players, in the Cup, it was Axel Witsel alongside a different player in each game. So always two there, Witsel being one of them. And Witsel retired after the Cup. So it was a rotation of all the players here mixed with attacking midfielders. So a little hard to simplify here. The best way to explain it is to look at the number of starts of each of these players. So Mangala had the most with 8, but was only consistently there in the second half of the period. Tielemans, on the other hand, played throughout and had 7 appearances, while Onana had 6 and was more prominent at the beginning of the period. And tidily, all 3 of them started together in the last game. Vermeeren and Vrangs started 3 each, and both of those were primarily towards the end and also tended to be in the experimental friendlies. And I should have said at the beginning of the mediacast that their last 3 games were friendlies, and especially the fourth last game against Serbia, that would have been the first game in November, was very experimentative. Mostly bench players were used, and to a lesser degree, the second last game also kind of tried different players. So these lesser players, or these kind of possible candidates, if they have caps, got their caps in those games primarily. Okay, for left midfielders and right midfielders, we don't have any candidates here. We did have Thomas Meunier as a right midfielder, or he's coded that way, but we did move him to right back for our mediacast here because that was the position he played in during this period. So we're just going to talk about the position because those two formations, the 4-3-3 and the 5-3-2, 3-5-2, do have left and right midfielders. So we wanted to comment on who filled them. Mostly they were filled by defensive and central midfielders who we've met already, but sometimes by attacking midfielders who we will meet. We do see something of a pattern on the left with Yannick Carrasco playing as a left midfielder, especially in the first half of the period. We're going to meet him as a left attacker, though, because he plays other positions that suit him. So we'll cover him as a left attacker. In the second half, so that would be basically from September 2023 onwards, central midfielder Tielemans is most often seen in this left midfield position. Again, keep in mind they use the 4-3-3 formation about half of the time, so we do see it. Okay, next on the right, attacking midfielders filled the role only once here, and De Bruyne was in the position. Otherwise, the right midfield was played by one of the central midfielders, most commonly Mangala, who generally tends towards the right side of the field. Okay, we move on upfield to the attackers, and we've kind of reorganized things here for our narrative. So I'll just say what this position is. the left attacking could be a winger or a left attacking midfielder or a left forward in a 4-3-3. So it depends on the formation. We do have the 3-4-2-1 formation, which actually has both a winger and attacker. In most cases, the winger is a defensive back moving up. And we see that with Belgium, not so much on the left, but on the right side, with Castagna moving up into a winger role when the formation calls for it. But usually for Belgium, it's a player who also plays as, no, not for Belgium, I mean in general. Usually it's a player who plays as a left attacker or right attacker. Here. So for Belgium, we're going to treat this winger position as two left attacking positions for the two games that they use this formation. Otherwise, this position covers the upper left quadrant of the field, as I said, and for Belgium tends to be more like a right forward or left forward because they use the 4-3-3 formation quite a lot. Okay, let's look at the candidates for left attacker. Actually, we have, sorry, I'll just go ahead. Likely candidate Yannick Carrasco. And also likely is Jeremy Doku. He's coded as a right winger, but we've moved him to the left side here. We'll probably, his coding will probably get changed. We have a possible but unlikely candidate in Alexis Saelamakers, and then retired players Eden Hazard and Thorgan Hazard, who we talked about in section 1. Okay, that is the candidates. Let's go back and look at them. So Yannick Carrasco is 32 years old, and he has been with the team since 2015, so coming in a bit later than the Golden Generation players, but he does have 72 caps and 11 goals. And he has recently, not recently, but in 2023, moved to Al Shabab in Saudi Arabia. Prior to that, he was with Atletico Madrid in his second stint with them for 3 years. Part of tournament since the 2016 Euro Cup, and a starter in well, we'll just say the World Cup 2022 and before. So Yannick Carrasco, let's look at his recent history. He started 8 of their 12 games and was subbed in for 2. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches. So that moved him down a notch for us. But in truth, I would be very surprised if they didn't bring him, because he's an important player for them. I forgot to introduce one of the likely candidates here. The next one is actually Leandro Trossard. He's 29 years old and has been with Belgium since 2020 with 32 caps and 7 goals. And he plays for Arsenal in England since 2023 and Brighton before that. He was selected for Euro 2020, his first tournament, and the World Cup, just a substitute in both of those tournaments. And Leandro Trossard has started 6 of their 12 games in the recent period, subbed in for 2 and not selected for 4 others. So Leandro Trossard, a likely candidate. And also Jeremy Doku, who is 22 years old, been with Belgium since 2020 with 20 caps and 2 goals. And he plays for Manchester City in England since 2023. He was with the Wolves in France before that for 3 years. He was selected for Euro 2020 and the World Cup, so both recent tournaments, but was a substitute in those. And it remains kind of a substitute. He started 5 of their 12 games, subbing in for 3 and on the bench for 2. He wasn't selected for the first 2 matches after the World Cup. So Jeremy Doku, a likely candidate. And finally, we have Alexis Sailmakers. I won't go into detail on his biography. He seems to have trouble getting his foot in the door with Belgium. Over this period, he was subbed in 3 times and on the bench twice, but he was not selected for 5 matches, including the last 2. So Sailmakers kind of on the outskirts here. Okay, we can summarize the position of left attacker. So in the cup, in game 1, it was that 2-man formation. So we had Carrasco as the winger and Eden Hazard as the left attacking midfielder. In the following 2 games, it was a 4-2-3-1 formation, so just a left attacking midfielder. And Thorgan Hazard played game 2 and Carrasco game 3. Since then, Carrasco has almost always played in the position, regardless of what it is: left midfielder, left winger, left attacking midfielder, or left forward. And he even appeared as a centre forward on the right side once. So, as we said, Carrasco would be a definite candidate had he not missed the last 3 games. He was a substitute in 1 and not selected for the last 2. Trossard and Doku each have 4 starts on this side. All right. So again, I should just make that clear because it looks like there are too many. In a lot of cases, it was Carrasco as the left midfielder and Trossard or Doku as the left forward in the 4-3-3 formation. Okay, let's move on to the right side and look at our candidates. We have 2 definite candidates. The first is Dodi Lukebakio, and the second is Johan Bakayoko. And then we do have a player who seems to be off the squad, Julian Duranville, but his name has popped up during this period. So we'll put him on the list. We won't talk about him because he's seemingly off the squad, but we will if he ends up being selected. We'll do that in part 2. Let's look at the definite candidates. Dodi Lukebakio is actually coded just generally as a winger, but we're moving him here. He's been playing on the right side only. And Lukebakio is 26 years old and has 14 caps and 2 goals since 2020. He actually does have 1 cap for Congo DR in 2016, but through his allegiance to Belgium. Lukebakio plays for Sevilla in Spain since 2023, Hertha Berlin in Germany before that, has not been selected for any tournaments, was on the preliminary squad for the 2022 World Cup, didn't make the final cut, and he has started 4 of their games since the 2022 World Cup. However, he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 2, so he was always called up during this period, and that's why we have him as definite to make the final squad. Johan Bakayoko is 21 years old and has 10 caps and one goal since 2023. And he played for PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands since 2022 and we got his first appearance in March 2023. And went on to start 6 of their remaining 12 games, as well as subbing in for 4 and on the bench for 2 others. So in some ways, he probably looks more definite than Lukebakio, although we have both of them as definite candidates. Let's summarize the position. So a lot of what I said about the left side is true on the right. So I won't go through all that again. De Bruyne is in this right attacking position in all 3 games of the World Cup, regardless of the position. So right attacking midfielder in the last two games of the Cup, and something different in game one. After the Cup, Luka Bacchio and Bakayoko alternated in this position, but not game by game, but rather in 2 to 3 game chunks. We also saw left wingers Trossard and Doku each getting a start on this right side. All right, let's move on to our last midfield position, central attacking midfielders. And the position actually does not exist in their favored 4-3-3 formation, and it's actually not used that much. It's only in the 4-2-3-1 formation, used twice in the Cup and twice after. Let's look at the candidates here. Kevin De Bruyne is the first one. And he is, we put him at the likely level, even though we think he's a definite candidate. We have Charles de Ketelaere in this, coded as an attacking midfielder, but we moved him to a forward position as that was his only start. And then we have a couple of players who seem to be off the squad. Mike Tresor, not selected for the last 7 matches. And Hans Vanaken, not selected for the last 8 matches. Tresor has no tournament experience, but Vanaken was called up for the last 2 tournaments. And we also have retired candidate Dries Mertens. We're putting him as retired, not because he's announced it, but because he's been off the squad since the 2022 World Cup. And so that leaves us really with just one candidate to introduce. That's 32-year-old Kevin De Bruyne. He's been with Belgium since 2010, and almost the face of the golden generation here. He has 99 caps and 26 goals, and has been with Manchester City in England since 2015. He's been part of all of the golden generation tournaments as a starter. Since the 2014 World Cup. But over this period, he's only started the first 2 of their 12 games. He was injured quite a bit for 6 of the games and not selected for 4 others. But he has since recovered from injury, so is back playing at the end of the season for his club, and likely back for Belgium as well. So let's summarize the position. It was Eden Hazard and Mertens each playing the role once in the Cup, the 2 times they used the formation. And after the Cup, De Bruyne once and Tresor once, each playing in the position. Okay, let's go to forwards then. We have no players coded as secondary strikers, so we move directly to forwards. And we have Romelu Lukaku as a definite candidate, and also Lois Openda, definite. Michy Batshuayi is a likely candidate. And then Charles de Ketelaere, coded actually as an attacking midfielder, but moved here. He is a possible candidate. Let's introduce those players. Romelu Lukaku, now 31 years old, and has been with the team since 2010, and 114 caps with a stunning 83 goals. He's on the roster of Chelsea, actually his second stint with them since 2021, but has been out on loan quite a bit to Inter Milan first and then to Roma since 2023. So Lukaku has been part of the Euro Cup part of tournaments since the 2014 World Cup, so also one of the faces of the golden generation there. However, in the 2022 World Cup, he came into the tournament with injury. Was not on the bench even for game 1, but subbed into games 2 and 3 there. Otherwise, he's been a starter in tournaments. And in Euro 2024 qualifying, he scored 14 of their 22 goals. Wow. So not only the top scorer for his team, but the top scorer in in Euro qualifying altogether. Lukaku has started 10 of their 12 games since the 2022 World Cup, and he was on the bench for one and not selected for one. So a definite candidate, and looking good going into this tournament. The other definite candidate is Lois Openda. He's 24 years old, and he has 16 caps and 2 goals for the national team since 2022. And Openda plays for Leipzig in Germany since 2023. He was selected for the World Cup in 2022, but appeared only in game 1 as a substitute. Openda has started 3 of their 12 games since the World Cup and subbed in for 7 and on the bench for 1. So just 1 match that he was not called up for. Lois Openda, then a definite candidate. The likely candidate is Michy Batshuayi, and he is 30 years old now. Been with Belgium since 2015 and has 55 caps and an impressive 27 goals. That's almost 50%, a really good scoring ratio. Batshuayi plays for Fenerbahce in Turkey since 2022. He was also with Chelsea from 2016 to 2022, though he was loaned out during that period. Selected for all tournaments since the 2016 Euro Cup, but only in 2022 was he a starter, starting because of Lukaku's injuries there, and has not started any of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023. However, he was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 5. The only 2 matches that Batshuayi missed were the first 2 after the World Cup due to injury. So a likely candidate, Michy Batshuayi. I would say, given the lack of candidates here, he's probably a definite candidate. Charles de Ketelaere is actually an attacking midfielder, coded as such, but moved to forward for our discussion here. De Ketelaere is 23 years old with 14 caps and 2 goals since 2020. He is with AC Milan in Italy since 2022, but actually was loaned to Atalanta in Italy since 2023. He was selected for the World Cup in 2022, appearing in 1 game as a substitute there, and recently has started only 1 of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, but out with 2 separate injuries for the last 4 matches, although he missed only 1 club game in each of those international periods, November and March. So obviously those injuries not that serious, and he is not listed as injured or anything now. So those are the candidates. Let's look at the position. So we do consider this actually a single centre forward, even in the 4-3-3 formation. We look at that as a forward with a left attacking and right attacking midfielder. So usually it's just 1 position, but in 2 games it was a pairing of 2 forwards. As we saw, Lukaku is not fit to start in the World Cup in 2022, so Batshuayi started the first 2, and left attacker Trossard started as centre forward in the 3rd. Lukaku returned after the Cup and played in the position consistently, except for the 2 experimental friendlies near the end, Openda starting both of those games. When it was a pairing, it was alongside Lukaku, De Ketelaere once, and somewhat surprisingly left attacker Carrasco once. So that's the 2nd time we've seen a left attacker step into the centre forward position. And Carrasco was on actually the right side when he played there, making it even a little bit more surprising. All right, that brings us to the end of our look at the candidates. So we move into section 3 with any closing thoughts, and it's pretty obvious that the theme for Belgium is the retirement of the golden generation. So we see a number of players who have retired. Some of them haven't, though, most notably De Bruyne and Lukaku, although they are aging. De Bruyne coming off an injury during the season, and Lukaku having been injured for the World Cup in 2022. It'll be interesting to see how they go forward, and we'll get a glimpse of that in the June games. Let's move on to a quick review of the candidates to see if we can identify any definite starters. And we begin with manager Tedesco, Domenico Tedesco. They won't get rid of him at this point, so we'll call him a definite starter. For goalkeepers, certainly not. Courtois, we're not sure if he's out of the picture, kind of moving towards drifting off the team, or whether his injuries are the reason. But he's pretty much been out for the whole period, and Sells and Casteels are really the ones coming in to start. At first, it looked like Casteels would be the one, and now it looks like Sells is. He started 5 of the last 6, but we can't be sure. So again, the June games may shed some light on that one. Probably will, actually, unless they each start one. Let's look at defenders, central defenders. Wout Faes, definitely a starter. Jan Vertonghen would be a starter, except he's out injured. It doesn't look like he's coming back. Well, that really opens the door to some of the players who are really bench or substitute players. Zeno de Baas seems the most the most likely among the candidates we have. One of the other candidates, Al Dakhil, is also injured, so the door is really open for those. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it's our left back, Arthur Theat, because when they've used a 3-man central defence, he's come back into it, and they may trust him more as a central defender than some of the less experienced candidates. Either way, Arthur Theat is a definite candidate. Whether he goes back into central defence or plays left back, as he has been mostly doing, he had the firm grip on that position. At the right back, we have Timothy Castagne, has an even firmer grip on that position. So we think he is a definite candidate. Moving to the defensive midfield. We don't have anyone playing enough that we can say for certain is going to be a starter. I'll highlight a couple of players in blue, though. Oro Mangala seems to be a likely starter, probably Yuri Tielemans too, and perhaps Amadou Onana, though a little less likely because he started a bit less towards the end of the period from the beginning of 2023. So kind of up in the air there. We did see Franks and Vermeeren coming in more at the end, so we could see some switch ups there in the absence of Axel Witsel, who was really the main man in the World Cup. Okay, left attacking midfielders. I would say Yannick Carrasco is a likely starter in some position. He's kind of plays a lot of positions kind of in the upper left quadrant of the field, or even as a left midfielder. Trossard and Doku could be starters, but we're not confident enough to say so. And yeah, so but there may be more than one left attacker depending on the formation. Okay, and retired there is Eden Hazard, even though he didn't play a big role in the World Cup last time out. On the right attacking side, Luka Bacchio and Bakayoko really seem to be alternating in the spot. So we can't nominate a single one of them, but we do know one of them will start, or else they'll alternate. Central attacking midfielder. It's hard to say about Kevin De Bruyne because he's been injured and out for so long that he hasn't appeared in the cup. But wow, hard not to see him as a starter. Am I bold enough to highlight him? I am. I think Kevin De Bruyne will start somewhere. For him, it'll likely be as a right attacker or as a central attacking midfielder, although they don't use that position that much. But it's hard to see them leaving him on the bench. And among the forwards, Romelu Lukaku is back after his struggles in the World Cup with injury and has been doing fabulously. So he will almost certainly be the starter for them. Okay, that's the end of the race through the most likely starters, and we begin with a review of injuries here. We're going to categorize them. 3 of the 4 injuries we're looking at have an unknown return date. So we'll begin with goalkeeper Bodard, Arnaud Bodard. Just a possible candidate for us. He's out with a minor knock. I put that in quotation marks because that minor knock has been since late April and has an unknown return date. So certainly seems to be something more than minor there. More significantly is Jan Vertonghen. We had him as a likely candidate. He is out with a hamstring injury since mid-May and an unknown return date. So to me, it looks like he would not make the cut, but we'll have to update that in part 2. I'll do the out of contention character because he's also a central defender. So missing 2 players. Amin Al-Dakhil, we had him as a possible candidate, but he might have been more possible given Vertonghen's injury. Al-Dakhil is out with a muscle injury since all the way back in mid-February, and he does have a return date. It's June 30th, so that would put him out of the cup. So we have him in the out of contention category. Going back to the unknown return dates, we have central midfielder Astor Vranks, and he is out with the torn muscle fiber since early May and an unknown return date. So again, that sounds maybe like an injury that'll put him out of the cup, but one we'll have to update in part 2. And we actually finish here by previewing part 2. So in part 2, we'll put it out once we know the final rosters, and we can look at the list that we created here, kind of go through it and see which candidates made it and which ones didn't. We'll pay particular attention to notable non-selections. That would be likely or definite candidates on our list here that are not selected, and then any surprise inclusions, including newcomers. And we always have a couple of those. So we look forward to that in part 2, and we look forward to you joining us there too. We would like to thank Mike Kripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.